Hi everybody, welcome to another Career Foundry event. This is my first event of 2024. Might be a little bit rusty, but welcome everybody. Happy New Year. I think Maureen and I just realized that we can still say that on the 9th of January, but Happy New Year to everybody who's joining. We've got a lot of people joining this evening. I think a lot of people are interested in design. Whilst we are waiting and whilst people are joining, we want to make this as interactive as possible. So on Big Mark on the right-hand side, you'll see a public chat. Just drop your name and give us some emojis too. Love the emojis. Drop your name and also just add what you think will be a UX design trend for this year. We're going to start this off. So what do you think design trends could be this year? Before we get started, I'm William, Events and Communications Lead here at Career Foundry. Let me just very briefly introduce Career Foundry before we kick off with Maureen. So Career Foundry is the online school for your career change into tech, and we guide you from complete beginner to job-ready professional in UX design and help you land your first job in the field. We're not any old school. Our programs are so flexible that you don't need to quit your day job. You get regular one-to-one mentorship from a mentor and a tutor. And if you don't land a job within 180 days of graduation, you get a full refund. So that's our job guarantee. If you've got any questions about one of our programs, the course curriculum, the dual mentorship model, or maybe design jobs in your locality, I would recommend booking a call with one of our program advisors. I'll post a link in the chat if you want to book a call with them and talk about the programs, because tonight it's going to be all about design and trends that are up and coming in 2024. And there is nobody better to do this than Maureen, who was previously a Career Foundry graduate in UX design, has worked at quite a few companies, was based in Berlin, but has recently moved from being in Berlin to being in Amsterdam and is now working at Miro. And I think Maureen will tell you all about that and share all of her insights too. So if you've got any questions, we're going to have a live Q&A at the end. Drop your questions in the public chat. I'm going to disappear into the ether and Maureen's going to take control. And enjoy everybody. Maureen, I'm going to disappear. It's you've got the floor.
Thank you, Will. See you later. So today we're going to start the year with an overview of what we can expect in the coming year or years. And what we'll talk about today is first taking stock of past trends, maybe developments that we can still see. And then we'll have a look into what the future beholds for us. So obviously, we're going to talk about AI and other emerging technologies. I'm also going to talk a bit about the changing job market, about the role of UX designers or product designers, and overall the state of design and where we're at right now. So if you don't know me yet, I am Maureen. I started my UX journey at Career Foundry in 2017, so that's already a while ago. I formerly worked at Zalando. Currently, I'm working at Miro. You might know me from Instagram, although nowadays I mostly write about design on Substack. So if you're interested in that, you can find me under the name The Cursor on Substack. It's kind of like a blog, but you can also subscribe. And if you are familiar with the YouTube channel of Career Foundry, then you might have seen these two videos that we've done in the past 2 years, where we also discussed different UX trends. So in 2022, we started with this, we followed up in 2023, and now in 2024, we're again talking about trends. And I thought it would be interesting to start this webinar by taking a look back and seeing what I discussed in the past 2 years. So what kind of trends were like, I wouldn't say a hype, but what kind of trends were popular at that time, if they're still around or if they kind of phased out. And it was quite interesting to me to see that there are some things that we can still see nowadays and some things that we don't hear that much about anymore. So in the 2022 video, obviously, we talked a lot about Web3, about AR, VR, about the metaverse, about hybrid working, because we were still dealing with the impact of a pandemic and how that changed the way that we work. And looking at the 2023 and 2024 state of design, it's interesting that not that many people talk about Web3 anymore, or the metaverse. It's not something that I've heard recently. AR and VR is something that is mentioned a little bit more, and we'll also take a little look at that in a little bit. But obviously, in the past year, most of the talk has been around AI technology. So we're also going to look into that. What I found quite interesting is that in the video of 2023, we talked a lot about different UX roles, for example, UX writing, about the impact of the environment on design and vice versa, the impact of design on the environment, so planet-centric design. And we could already see the first signs of how the job market for designers is changing. And that is something that we have noticed even more as 2023 progressed. Unfortunately, a lot of companies had to lay off a lot of designers. The design industry was quite heavily impacted by that. You might know, or you might even be someone that was laid off, or you might be struggling with finding a job in the first place. So we've been under quite some heavy weather, the designers. So let's see how that is developing in the next year. As you might have known if you've seen these videos, if you don't know, that's fine as well. The webinar is called Trends, but I focus more on overall developments and changes because I don't really believe that there are very short-lived trends in terms of UX design. The changes seem to go a bit more slowly and stick around for a bit longer. Whereas when we really look at UI trends, these of course come and go, like colors, styles, they come and go. But for UX, it's a little bit different. So let's jump right in with the new and emerging technologies. And of course, we saw the birth of many AI tools and plugins over the past years. I'm sure that you've heard about ChatGPT. I'm also pretty sure that most of you already tried it out. There are some AI tools that I've been using at work and in my personal life. The ones that I particularly like are Midjourney to create visuals and imagery. I've used Otter in the past, which is kind of like a transcription AI that can help you with summarizing meetings. Very useful if you're doing user research. And we've also seen companies creating their own AI or their own AI features or plugins like Miro AI, Figma AI, the Canva AI. So it's really hard to avoid AI technology at this point. And what is so interesting when you look at this through the design lens is that a lot of the AI tools that we have, or a lot of the AI plugins that are currently available, are mostly focused on either collecting and synthesizing data, so they can really help with user research, or a lot of plugins are focused on visual design, on UI design, generating styles, color palettes, helping you identify little mistakes in Figma, for example. So it's more either the collection of data or helping with visual design. But where does it fit into actual UX and product design? What kind of AI tools are useful there? And that's where I noticed that it was quite hard to find a really deep impact of AI right now, because I feel like we're not quite there yet. And I'm very excited to see in the future what will come. So when we look at these tools, there are some that already focus really on research itself, for better or for worse. This was some example that really stood out to me, maybe not for the right reasons, but there are even AI tools that can help you do user research without the users. And personally, I think this is quite a dystopian view on AI and quite a dystopian use of AI if we start using AI to completely rule out talking with people. I'm not sure if that's the direction we want to go to, but it's interesting. And to be fair, I haven't tried the tool myself. Maybe it's amazing. If someone of you has tried it, please let me know. But I have my own question marks in this case. So when we look at these AI tools and we look at the impact of AI currently, we see that it's mostly focused on visual design and on quantitative work. So a lot of the tools are focused on synthesizing data, like I said, on creating transcripts, summaries, on giving you inspiration, and also on general knowledge. I'm sure if you've tried ChatGPT, that is a really great tool to get just a general answer on questions really quickly. But when we dig a little bit deeper into the actual tasks of UX designers, you'll find that there are still a lot of things where we actually need people and not just AI tools, which is good news for us, because that means that we don't have to be afraid to be replaced just yet, because things like interviewing real people, extracting valuable insights, fostering collaboration, finding solutions that meet business goals and user needs, defining strategies, running qualitative tests, defining complex user flows, or even creating on-brand copy and imagery. These are still things where we very much need actual skills from actual human beings. And what that means to me when I look at this is, what I take away from this is that AI is a really good partner when it comes to work that can be automated, tasks that currently really take away the focus of what really matters. For example, synthesizing data or writing transcripts that takes so much time. That time we can actually use to interview people or to define strategies. So, if anything, I'm really excited to see where this impact of AI will take us, because personally, I think it will free up more time for us to invest in actual soft skills. So, in working together with people, interviewing people, understanding user needs. And that really is the core of working as a UX designer. So that's one part that we've seen a lot, visual, the AI tools. But when you look at visual designs in general, there's also been the birth of other design tools that kind of remind you of Figma in terms of how intuitive it is and in terms of how um, easy it is to use. And you can tell that they're made for 2D designers. So the past years, you've seen tools like Spline or like Womp, which are 3D design tools that are way easier to learn and understand than a tool like Blender, for example. So I'm very excited to see this development. And it also makes me wonder, um, will this have a bigger impact in our industry? Will we now start working more with 3D design or with motion design because we have these tools that are easier for us to understand and easier for us to learn? So these boundaries between 3D and 2D are starting to blur a little bit. And there was another image here that somehow got lost, which is a bit of a shame, because there has been another tool that I've been a really big fan of in the past years, which is called Jitter. And Jitter is a tool that helps you to create motion design and animations super easily. And this is not sponsored. I just really like this tool because I always wish I could make animations, and I found it really difficult to do that. And with these new kind of tools, it makes it way easier. And I think that can also make it easier for us to incorporate these things whenever we are starting to create new user experiences. So working with 3D will become easier. In the 2022 video, and I believe also in the 2023 video, I talked a little bit about AR and VR because that used to be a really big thing. I think, especially when we were all locked up inside at home and we all wish we were at a different place, people got very excited about AR and VR. And then it kind of died down and the conversation kind of went nowhere. But maybe this year we hear more about it with the Apple Vision coming out, and also this new, I'm not even sure if you want to call it a device, because it's more like a pin. It's called Humane AI, and it helps you. It's, yeah, I'm not sure how to describe it. It's presented as the new mobile phone. So this can be truly revolutionary. And I'm very curious to see which of these technologies will stand the test of time. And what makes this especially interesting for designers, it's not necessarily like the new devices or a lack of a device in general, but more the question of how are we going to design experiences that have no screen, because the past years we've been focusing a lot on designing for mobile screens. So a lot of the design practices have been focused on getting clarity and transparency, getting good information architecture in very small real estate on mobile screens. But what happens if there is no screen at all anymore? How will that influence the way that we design? And how would we design if, for example, we're now projecting messages on our hand or we have a headset on? What would that do? So I'm very curious to see where these new technologies will take us. So that's the more like technological view on the future, things that might come or things that might pull through. I'm very curious to see what we will be seeing next year when we're in the webinar for the trends of 2025. If then everyone has an Apple Vision, or if AI is something that has completely changed our work, or maybe not at all. Let's see. But one thing that is definitely changing, and we can already tell from last year, and even more so, I think, this year, is a changing job market. And this is something that's been quite challenging for all of us in the past time. And when I think about the beginning of my UX journey, uh, it's been very different, even though it's just been 6 years now, or yeah, almost 6 years. In those 6 years, a lot of things have changed. So when I started my UX journey, there weren't that many UX designer that I knew. In fact, I didn't know any people that worked as a UX designer. There was not that much information available about UX design, and I really kind of had to figure it out all on my own. That was the downside. There was not much to learn online. There weren't that many people that I could talk about. But the benefit was also that there was not that much competition. So when I started to look for my first job, I had not a lot of issues finding a job because there weren't that many UX designers to compete with. That has kind of changed in the past years. And I think from 2017 to 2020, we could really see a boom of more and more people getting interested in UX design, which is really exciting. You saw a lot of communities flourishing, a lot of content around design came available, a lot of courses around UX design became available. Um, and I think that really reached its peak in 2021, where really a lot of people were starting to get into UX design, started to look for a job in UX design. And the benefit of all of that is that, of course, you have way more communities now, you have way more content around UX design nowadays. It's way easier to learn about UX design. But the downside is that, of course, if there are more people on the market looking for a job, the competition will also get way higher. And I think it really reached a peak in 2021, where we had also the times with us. It was a very good time to be a designer. There were a lot of design positions available. A lot of people were getting hired for very good pay, and it really felt like we were on top of the world. And then in 2023, it all came kind of like it all kind of broke down. People were facing layoffs. A lot of companies had to lay off a lot of different people. It became quite difficult to find jobs. The market became very competitive. And you might say that this is actually quite a hard time for designers. But if you look at the bigger picture, you realize that even this, although it's quite challenging at the moment, it is just a moment. If you look at this estimation from Nielsen Norman Group, they expect that the development of UX professionals in the world will only increase towards 2050. So you see how many people will come. So that also means how many more jobs will come, because even though it feels like there aren't that many jobs at this moment, the UX design industry is still relatively young. A lot of companies are still just learning about it and are still just learning about the value of design, and will come up with more positions later on, hopefully, as we can if we can check this graph and follow the estimations of Nielsen Norman Group, which is quite a renowned institution. So if you're in this moment and maybe you're struggling to find a job or you got laid off, it might really feel like it's too late to become a UX designer. We should all give up. It's not going to go anywhere. And I think it's not that bad. It will become better. It's just a little dent in a bit in the bigger picture. So even though these past years were booming and we are now definitely noticing that it's become harder, there are still some things that you can do for today's market. And I think one of the reasons why the market has become so competitive is because the supply of designers has increased tremendously and does not match the demands of the current market, which is facing quite bad economical times. There are just so many more juniors looking for a job that there are not enough entry-level jobs. So what can you do to stand out in a market like this? I think, first of all, is to have realistic expectations. So if you are looking to start your UX journey, or if you have just started your UX journey, you might think that switching your career will take a couple of months. And unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. That's not to say that it's not possible. There are still a lot of people that find a job pretty fast. But I think for the majority of us, it's quite challenging, and it does take a little bit more time than just a couple of months. So if you're looking to start your UX journey, or you're in the middle of your UX journey now and you're looking to find that first job, have realistic expectations and understand that it's normal to really spend months or even up to a year to switch your career. So to give a bit of context, even in 2017, when I started my UX journey, I took almost a year to switch my career entirely. So even then, at the time when there was not that much competition, where there were enough jobs for me to apply to, even then it took me almost a year, because it just takes time to build up expertise. And this expertise is the thing that will get you a job. Which brings me to the second point. If you are looking for a job now, it's very how would you say it? It's very tempting to just focus on your portfolio and try to fill that portfolio with case studies as soon as possible and start applying to jobs as soon as possible and start applying to as many jobs as you can. But that is a very counterproductive strategy, because your portfolio is more an outcome of your learning rather than a goal in itself. And I think this is a mistake that I see a lot of beginners making, that they are so hyper focused on their portfolio that they kind of forget what this portfolio is for. And it's to showcase all the things that you've learned. So, in order to do that, you of course have to learn something first. And that is what I would do if I would be starting my UX journey this year or today. I would really focus on learning these different skills and really understanding what UX design exactly entails, on learning different design methodologies and really understanding how Figma works, for example, doing some personal projects to practice all these skills. And only then would I start thinking about building my portfolio. Then, when you do have your portfolio, there's another hurdle to overcome and another mistake that a lot of beginners make, which is that they kind of use a shotgun approach to your job search. So, just apply to any job that you can find. And that sounds like a good strategy, because if you apply for anything, something should come back, right? But that's not really how it works. I think it's been, at least for me, always a very effective approach to focus on quality over quantity when it comes to your job search. So instead of applying for 100 different jobs, find the 5 jobs that really fit your profile. And what I mean with that is, find the 5 jobs where you have relevant experience or skills, because you, for example, worked in that industry before, or you're particularly interested in that industry, or you can find a lot of information about that industry. You might have done some personal projects around it. And what that does is, it makes it way easier for you to apply for a job, because you can really showcase that you understand the role. And I like to compare a job search with dating, where you wouldn't want to date someone that is seeing 100 different people and that isn't really interested in getting to know you, but just wants to spend some time with you and see where it goes. You much rather spend time with someone that genuinely wants to get to know you, that puts time in you, that is interested in you. And it's the same with a job search. Really research the companies that you're applying to. Really think about, what can I do to stand out there? What can I do to make this cover letter fit this job application? So, in general, if you're now looking for a job in today's market, be gentle with yourself, have patience, be realistic, understand that it will take more time and that is normal, and you're not too late. It's just part of being in this moment right now. And focus on long term thinking. So, focus on your learning, focus on building quality, and that will eventually make everything way easier than just building a portfolio without building knowledge and then applying for whatever job you can find. That's gonna be a approach that takes a lot of time and will not yield the results that you might hope for. So, even though the job market is changing a lot, and we're in a bit of a bad weather at the moment, it's a bit of a difficult moment, I'm sure we all will come out of it. In the long run, the amount of UX professionals will increase, the amount of jobs will increase, it will all get better. There's no reason to panic. There's no reason to be afraid that AI will take over our jobs, because, as I just shown, there are still a lot of responsibilities that require actual human empathy and not a machine coming up with answers. But what what I'm more concerned about really is the focus of our role. So I'm not so worried about AI taking over our job, or, like it's too late to become a UX designer. I don't think that. But what I'm more concerned about is, what does UX design even entail anymore? What is that role exactly? And the reason I'm wondering about this is because it seems like the past years we've had so many different job titles that we're kind of losing focus on what exactly a UX designer is. Nowadays, you have product designers, UX UI design, and it's kind of used interchangeably. To give an example, in my own experience, um, I've worked under a UX designer title, I've worked under a service designer title. Currently, I'm a product designer, and it makes you really wonder, what exactly are we doing, and what is the difference between all of these titles, and how do these different titles influence our role expectations, really? And it makes me wonder, are we becoming kind of like a jack of all trades and a master of none? Because there are so many different things that are expected from designers. And it's expected as a designer that you are skilled in many different kind of skills. So, of course, when you look at the core skill set of a UX designer, we're talking about user research, user flows, information architecture, usability testing. But over the past years, I've seen this role evolve in many different directions. So, to bring that back to my own roles and my own jobs that I've had, is that this dark yellow part, that's just been the core. But then, depending on the company I'm working at, they might require more strategic skills from me, or they might require more business knowledge from me, or they might expect me to also facilitate workshops, or be really good at visual design, or really good at service design. And then, with these new technologies, also, of course, also come new skills. So maybe companies might expect you to become really good at AI prompting and prompt engineering, or they might expect you to become really good at coding or at 3D and motion design. So it really makes me wonder, what's the core of a designer? And can we even talk about the core responsibilities of a designer? Or is it really just dependent on what or what the companies that we work for decide we should be and what we should do? Now, what I've noticed myself in the past years working as a product designer slash UX designer slash service designer is that these titles are a little bit arbitrary, because when it comes down to the actual day-to-day work that you're doing, a lot of the things are the same, regardless of what your job title is. So when I bring that back to my current role at Miro, for example, I'm doing a lot of user research. I'm doing a lot of strategic work, a lot of workshop facilitation, a lot of visual design and business. So a lot of the things that I'm doing is fit in this vertical here. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor in the vertical strategy to business. But for example, I don't do any coding. I don't do any motion design or 3D design. I do not really any usability testing, but that is something that I've done in previous roles. So it really depends on what kind of company you're working at, what the tasks are that you're doing. So if you feel lost in job titles, I do too. And what really helped me is to kind of ignore the different job titles and focus more on what it actually is that you need to do. And what I found over the past years is that hard skills like learning how to code, or learning 3D skills or motion design, these are things that you can relatively easily learn, or you have colleagues who are very skilled in this. For example, I'm not a very strong visual designer. Luckily, I never had to be, because I could work with design systems and I had colleagues who were very good UI designers, so I could rely on their expertise. But one thing that I noticed that I couldn't rely on other people on, that I really had to build within myself, because it's important that everyone has it, are soft skills. And soft skills are especially important when you're working as a designer, because as a designer, you're basically building bridges between different disciplines. So you'll find that you're working with a lot of different people. You're working with marketing people, with customer care agents, with engineers, with product managers, with people that have absolutely no knowledge of design. And you need to be able to bring all of these people together, build something together, and understand different agendas that people have. And that's where these soft skills come into play. So over the past years, I've been focusing a lot on sharpening skills around collaboration, and how can I convincingly and present designs or explain design to other colleagues, so that they understand why I'm in the room and what the value of design is. So things like storytelling and clear communication have become very important, and I believe that they will continue to be important, and maybe even become more important as we have more and more AI tools that can help us with the hard skills, as we have more and more tools in place that help us with visual design, like design systems. I'll talk about that in a minute, or AI tools. These are the things that can be automated in a certain sense, or that can be where we can be replaced to a certain degree. But when it comes down to actual people work, that is something that's very hard to replace with a tool. So that is something that's worth investing in, because these skills are transferable. And again, coming back to the point of the changing job market, those are also skills that, regardless of how a job market looks like and how it develops, they're always important to have, and you can take them to any kind of role. Then the second part that I've noticed is quite important is to understand the business side of things. And when I just started my UX journey, I was very much thinking like, I'm an advocate for the users and I am the voice for the users. But what I didn't realize at that time was that you can be a voice for the users, but the users of what? Of a certain product, of a certain service. So you still need to understand the business side of things. And if you really learn to understand that, you will find that these two things like business and user needs are not enemies. They might be opposite of each other, but they also need each other. You can only have users if you have a good business, and you can only have a good business if you fulfill user needs. So you do really need to understand those two parts. And so what I've been doing in the past years is really trying to get more knowledge around that. And the way I did that was by getting more involved in company strategy work. So whenever I joined a new company, I really took time to understand what's the vision of this company, what's the strategy, what are the items that they're planning to build, so the features that they're planning to build, what are the internal challenges, what are colleagues that are not designers working on, and what are the goals that they are trying to achieve. And that really helps me to understand how a business is running and how we're making money in the end. And that's what keeps us all afloat, and that's what keeps us all having a job. So it's not really something that should be ignored, even if you are a UX designer. And then lastly, and that's what I've already talked about before, what I've noticed really helps me when I start to feel confused about all the responsibilities of designers is to just not focus too much on job titles, because they are really dependent on a company what one company might call a product designer is a UX designer in another company, or is a service designer in another company. And like I just told you, I've been called many different job titles, but the core work has been kind of the same, with some changes here and there throughout the different roles I've had. So if you're looking for a job, I would not like stare myself blind on the different job titles, but rather research companies and focus on different tasks and responsibilities rather than titles. That also comes back to the tip I've given before, where if you're looking for a job, really research the company that you're working for, because that will help you decide, is this a role that I want to work in? Is this something that fits my interest or my skill set? And the true game changer for me really was when I completely let go of this, because in the beginning of my career, I was still very much focused on getting a senior title as soon as possible. And throughout the past 5.5 years that I've been working as a designer, regardless of how it was called, I've been on a mid-level position, I've been on a senior position, and I've been on a mid-level position, and I've been on a senior position. Now I'm on a mid-level position again. And for me, letting go of all of these different titles and levels and more focusing on what actually matters, which is your responsibilities, the impact you can have on a company, pay, work benefits, that has really made it much easier for me to navigate the complexities that come with working in design and the different responsibilities. Because what matters in the end is that you're learning and that you're growing and that you have um, fun at work, that you feel that you're fairly compensated, and then the job title and level doesn't really matter that much. So how that all ties back to the future of design is, I think in the next years we will only have more confusion about what it means to work as a UX designer. More titles will come. I wouldn't be surprised if soon we will have a UX AI designer, or AI UX, or AI UI UX. I wouldn't be surprised if we have even more responsibilities or expectations around our role. And the only thing I think we can do as designers is to focus on what actually matters and not get distracted by all these different titles and confusion. Okay, and now there is something that I want to discuss that is something more like a personal view on things, and I'm very curious how you see this. So I'm also very curious. Leave comments in the leave some comments how you see this, because this is more like a loose idea that I have, and I'm really want to see. And I wish I had like a globe in which I could see in the future, like a crystal ball, to see where this is heading to. Because as I was thinking about trends and developments in UX design, I was thinking, okay, what are true design innovations that we've seen lately? What is a true new UX development? And sure, we have AI and we have the Apple Vision, and we talked a bit about metaverse, and those are all new things, but they're not necessarily new design things. They're just overall new technologies. But what are things that are very typical for product design or UX design? And I was thinking about, like, did we even have like a true design innovation lately? And I'm not so sure if we do. And I think one of the reasons is because maybe innovation, or rather change, is not something we necessarily strive for. Maybe, let's say change. I think we always strive for innovation, but maybe change or newness is not necessarily something we strive for. And you see this in design systems, which help us to work very efficiently and very user-friendly. They made it way easier for us to design because there are defined components, there are defined colors, there are defined patterns, and the only thing we need to do basically is get the ingredients, follow the recipe, and then we have a design. The consequence of that is also that a lot of things start to look the same, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually good when things look the same in terms of user friendliness, because the more recognizable something is, the easier it is for users to use it. They don't have to figure out a new navigation system every time they open an app, because they just know what to expect because they've seen it at different places. So I think in that sense, design systems really help us to work more efficiently, more user-friendly. And in that sense, things looking the same is actually a good sign. And you could even say that creativity, in the sense of coming up with new and exciting UIs and new and exciting designs, can stand in the way of user friendliness. And you could definitely see this in the 90s and in the early 2000s, when everyone was just kind of doing whatever they wanted on the internet, and everyone was just kind of building websites fitting their own aesthetics. And I have to admit, I'm quite nostalgic for this. I really like this kind of old websites, but of course, in terms of accessibility, they are a complete nightmare, and this is not necessarily something we want to go back to. So in that sense, you could say, hey, the less creative a website looks like, the better it is, right? The more user friendly it is, the more we can focus on accessibility. But that got me thinking, okay, if things look the same, and that being a good thing, then is it also a good thing when things start to work the same, and when things start to offer the same? And this is really where I'm curious to hear your opinion, because when looking at the most popular platforms or apps at the moment, I start to feel like everything is the same. Like we have Twitter, now called X, then we had Instagram Threads, we have TikTok with the short form videos, then came Instagram Reels, then came YouTube Shorts, and it just seems like all the big platforms are all copying each other and doing the same. And that, to me, is really that really makes me think, where is the true design innovation in terms of experience that people can have on platforms? Even when you look at web shops, they all start to look the same. You now have 100 different kind of AliExpress slash Shein websites. Every kind of online web shop kind of works the same, and all starts to offer the same. And if there is one thing I hope for design and UX design and products in the future, is that we get something that's truly new, and something that comes with truly new features, with a truly new experience. And if there's one trend that I hope will come, I hope that it will be that, because even though it's great when things are recognizable and consistent, it's also kind of boring when we as designers will end up working at products that all do the same thing. And I hope that as designers, we are in a position to push forward and to come up with new ideas that are based on what we hear from customers, from users, that we can identify new features that truly help solve user needs, and that we can do that with the help of AI tools, that we will have the time in the future to actually talk with people, to actually go out and step away from the screen and come up with interesting ideas and come up with interesting products and services in the end. So with that, I will end my webinar. we have 10 minutes left for questions. And my question to you is, what do you think is the next big thing in UX? And what do you think will be the next big product innovation? Or do you think there will be a next big product innovation? Okay, I'm gonna mute myself, have a sip to drink. Will, I see you already came in for the questions.
Yeah, take a drink. Thank you so much, Maureen, for that presentation. Fantastic. And there's some great questions coming through. Keep them coming in the chat and in the Q&A tab, and I'll try and pick out as many as I can in the time that we've got left. Let's have a look. Let's just have a look and see if there's anything specifically on trends. Q&A. I mean, this is a nice question from the Carol that's come in. You know, Maureen, when you're working at Miro, what's your day look like as a UX designer, or your job title? I'm curious about the tasks and responsibilities that you face on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's quite hard to say because every day is different. But I would say the majority of my time currently is spent on research, actually, which I'm really happy about. Miro is a place where there is a lot of room for research. There's a lot of appreciation for research. So I'm talking a lot with partners, with customers. I'm working on the platform side of things. So I'm not working on like the sticky notes and all the tools that you would use in Miro, but I'm more working on the integrations that you can use in Miro. And for that, I'm doing a lot of explorative work, so doing a lot of user interviews. I help my PM with defining strategies, so there's a lot of strategic work that I'm doing. Today, I ran a big customer journey mapping workshop with partners because we're looking into how to monetize certain parts of Miro. So my focus right now is mostly research, but yes, my title is product design, and what that means is, compared to previous job roles or job titles, I'm now also doing more UI design parts. But as I said before, I'm not a UI designer by background, so this is the part that is a bit challenging for me in the role. But since we have a design system, it helps a lot. So yeah, when I'm not doing research, I'm working on a UI component, or I'm working on new flows and building those. So yeah, it's a little bit of everything that I've shown before.
Do you think that's pretty standard in design, that you have such a varied role and you work in lots of different things? Because I know a lot of career changes, they say at the start, you know, I'm tired of my job because I'm constantly doing the same thing, or I'm always repeating myself. Do you find it quite a varied job?
Yeah, it's super varied. And what I found is that there has always been freedom in the roles that I've had to shape them into what I like to do. So, for example, at Miro, I said that I am very interested in service design, that I want to do more research and I want to do more strategic work. And so the tasks that I get focus on that as well. And that's also a tip I can give others, is that if there is something that you want to focus more on, or a skill that you want to learn, then always discuss that with your managers and be very vocal about what you want to do and how you want to contribute, because that's how companies can also help you, well, reach that and kind of accommodate that.
Fantastic. Specifically on UX trends, I think Valeria has picked out a great point. And I like the hard questions. So Maureen, this is one of the harder questions. How do you feel about creating websites with the help of AI? As a person with a digital marketing background, I feel like it's simplifying and devaluing the work of both designers, marketing specialists, and developers. With that, I understand that for small businesses, it's a good and inexpensive solution.
I've tried plugins that do this now, and at this moment, I don't think it's very convincing, because there's still a lot of tweaking that you need to do. But I can imagine that those are things that in the future, as AI tools get better, those are the exact tasks that can help us, because we can learn more about what makes a landing page one that converts really well, or there are certain usability tips that are always applicable, or certain patterns that we can always reuse and that we're already reusing today. So I do think that that will simplify our job, but I don't think it will devalue our job. I think, if anything, it will save us time to focus on what actually matters. And what actually matters is to go out, talk with people, understand what their needs are, build strategies around that, and building a website that is usable and user friendly. There are a lot of things that you can just rinse and repeat. And in a way, we're already doing that today. There are a lot of websites that lay out different UX patterns and that people are just copying for their own websites to save time. So when an AI tool can do that, and we don't even have to search for it anymore, I see that as a positive thing and not as a devaluing thing.
I think so too. We've hosted lots and lots of guests. Lose my voice. We've hosted lots of guests in CareerFoundry events over the past year, 2 years. And since the kind of like ChatGPT became the buzzword last year, a lot of industry professionals, there was a little bit of concern when it first came out, but actually lots of people are working with it and seeing it as an assistant to the jobs which they're doing, taking away some of the more mundane tasks so that they can actually focus on some of the more interesting stuff and areas where humans can bring the most qualities and probably insights and expertise. I got a question from Austin. Can we get a recording of this presentation? For sure, we are recording. I'll send it around tomorrow with an email with some other links too. There was a great question from Cassandra a little bit further up. As a career switcher, do you always have to start out in a junior role, even if you have transferable skills from years of job experience in another non-design specific field? Great question.
Mm-hmm. I find that a really interesting question, because a lot of people are eager to get to as high of a seniority as they can right from the start, which I think, if you have transferable skills and you've been, for example, in a managing role before, it might be easier for you to start higher than a junior position. But what people oftentimes seem to forget is that starting on a junior position has a lot of benefits, because it will give you the freedom to make more mistakes, because you're a junior, so people are not expecting you to do everything perfectly. And when you're a junior, you're also usually not expected to mentor people, to manage stakeholders, to kind of do all the evangelizing work. You can really just focus on sharpening your craft on the actual design part. And I think what makes a senior is not necessarily how much better you are in Figma, but it's more about, can you lead teams? Can you manage very high level stakeholders? Can you present ideas well? Is your time management well? How are you going to have an impact, not just on a feature level, but all across the company? And these are things that you might have transferable skills in, and that helps. But these are also not things that I would want to rush, because they come with time. So I think it's not a must to start on a junior position, but I think there are a lot of benefits of starting on a junior position, and there's nothing wrong with the junior position. I sometimes wish I was still a junior, because it gives a lot of room for experimentation.
Don't we all? #silent here. But I also think the question raises also another great point, is that I know that a lot of people who start a course at CareerFoundry, or thinking about doing a course or changing careers, think, oh my God, I'm going to be starting from scratch. I'm going to be a complete newbie. I'm not going to know anything. Actually, there are a lot of transferable skills that a lot of people have, whether it's presentation, soft skills, people skills. We've had graduates who've been working in healthcare before. We've had teachers. Everybody brings a wealth of experience, language skills, for instance, if you're working in different countries, or maybe in a country with a specific target market. So I think one of the worst things to think is that, I'm starting this adventure not knowing anything, because actually everyone brings a wealth of knowledge to the table. MH, I love that, just initials, that's cool. It's got a great question, a design-specific question. As a designer, it's frustrating to get a feeling of that you can solve better or do better while working on any product. How do I overcome such moments?
Yeah, that's really reality of working as a designer, right? Like whenever you're working in a company, it's very rarely, at least in my experience, it very rarely happens that something is built exactly how you think is right. And I think that's also part of um, the reality of working as a designer is being able to make compromises and understand that um, the design perspective is just one perspective. We also have the business perspective, the technological perspective, and all of these puzzle pieces need to fit together. And sometimes you manage to make a really strong case for design and have your perspective a bit strongly represented, and sometimes costs or technological feasibility play a bigger role. So to answer your question, how can you deal with the frustrations of knowing things can be done better? um i th- I think I just learned to live with it. I think I just learned that design is being able to make compromises, and it cannot always be exactly how you want it to be. In fact, very rarely will it be the way that you want it to be. And I think what you can do is to coming back to the soft skills, to really tap into communication skills and storytelling skills and learn how to present design concepts in such a way that it is convincing to people. So also learning what to tell people in order for them to listen. So for example, when you're talking with non-design people, like they're not very interested in the design part of things, they might be way more interested in saving costs. So how can your design help them achieve that? I think that's one way to lessen the frustrations.
Great advice. Great tips. Um, I think Geeta's also got a fantastic question. I love that Geeta's brought up portfolios, and let me just shamelessly at this point just touch upon Career Foundry for 1 second. Is that the portfolio is the key takeaway when you do a Career Foundry program, and it is essential for landing that job, because when you go to a job interview, you have a portfolio, and that is how you're going to show people the projects that you've worked on. You can talk people through. I think Maureen can explain much better than I can about this. I'm just waffling, but it is the key takeaway. It is the key takeaway, and it will land you that job. So it's a vital a vital ingredient to getting that, landing that first job. But Geeta's question is fantastic too. Can you give some insight on what employers are excited to see in a portfolio?
I think what a good portfolio does is it shows you how you think. It shows your thought process. It shows um, how you make decisions. And so oftentimes people focus on just showing the nicest and most polished visuals in a portfolio. And these are important to get people's attention. But what actually matters when hiring people, and I've sat on the other side of the table as well, where I looked at portfolios for people to be hired, is I'm not really so interested in seeing how nicely made this visual is. I'm way more interested in what were the points of the process that you found difficult, where were the points where you had a lot of questions, what were the points of the design that took you a long time and a lot of iterations to come to the solution, because these are the things that help me understand how you think. And that's way more important, because if I need to work with you, I'm just going to assume that you're going to be good at design, and otherwise you can learn that. But what I need to know is how will it be to work together with you. So I think that is important to include in a portfolio, like your actual process. Don't be afraid to add the really ugly sketches in there and the 500 different iterations that you made, because those are actually that's the meaty part of the portfolio.
For sure, definitely. And also it's a step in the process, which you can explain in the interview. Raquel's got a question which links to this, the portfolio, but what's the best place to showcase my design?
I like that question because every designer will give a different answer to this. I think the best way to the best place to showcase your design is the one where you feel comfortable in. So if you have a really hard time using Webflow, like I do, then just don't use Webflow because you're just gonna spend so much time on it. So, for example, I've built my portfolio in Notion because that was the easiest for me, and I've applied at jobs using a Notion portfolio. I've also created my portfolio straight in Figma because that saved me time, and I've applied and gotten jobs with that portfolio. So the best place is the one that allows you to build a portfolio that's convincing. The one thing that I will say though is I would avoid places like Behance, simply because if you're building a portfolio, you want to make sure that it is responsive and that it's easy for people to access even when they're on their mobile phone. And when you're building on Behance, you're basically adding gigantic images in a container, and that doesn't scale very well. So I would avoid things like that. But other than that, you have people that use Webflow. ReadyMag is something that I'm using currently. Figma, Notion, Framer, Wix, Squarespace. There are many different website builders, and I think they're all they're all equally good. It's depending on how comfortable you feel in it.
For sure, lots of questions coming through there. Brad's got a question too. At what point will UI UX designers need to know AI AR? I'm struggling to get started in UI design, and I'm afraid it will be too late by the time I get any experience. Brad, just before Maureen answers, we are going to be hosting 2 new workshops with a CareerFoundry mentor, Craig Hansen, which are going to be UI design focused, but with AI. Also, CareerFoundry's programs have been integrated with AI now, 10%, 15%, I think. I need to double check that. But yeah, do check the CareerFoundry events page. It's not up yet, but in the next couple of weeks, we should have those new AI UI workshops up and running. So do check that out. But to answer the question, at what point will UI UX designers need to know AI? That's Brad.
I think I would already start looking into it at this point. So I don't think you will now need to do like a bachelor's on artificial intelligence. But if you're interested in using these tools, it doesn't hurt to already start playing around with them and already start working with them. But I think as goes with any skill, not just AI, but also coding. I oftentimes hear of people like, oh, should I now also learn motion design? Should I now also learn coding? Should I now also learn AI? I would say first focus on the core. And when you have that, you can start looking at things that interest you. If you are interested in AI, of course, pursue it. But if you are not at all interested in it, then focus on the actual core UI skills and just keep an eye on AI developments, but like if it doesn't interest you, why do a complete deep dive into it? That's doesn't really sound like a useful use of your time.
For sure. I know we've got so many questions coming through, but we do have a limited time this evening. Thank you for all the audience questions this evening. Some really, really great questions that came through. Maureen, thank you so much for presenting once again. Do we have another event lined up? I literally started back at work yesterday. Do we have another one in the pipeline?
And in February, no, actually, no, I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe in February, but I'm not sure.
Okay. We will double check. We'll double check
People will find out when they find out.
You'll find out when you find out.
Exactly.
Will. Maureen will be back on the channel, I swear. So for anyone who didn't get their question unanswered, either connect with Maureen, check out its UX collection on Instagram, yes, or anywhere else to connect.
Yeah, they can also subscribe to my newsletter, which I will send the link in the chat if you're interested in that.
check that out. It's in the chat at the moment. For anybody that's been watching and is thinking about career change and has been inspired by Maureen's presentation and the trends that are up and coming in the design industry, I would recommend booking a call with one of CareerFoundry's program advisors. They're based all over the world, so they will be able to help you with jobs in your locality. Specifically, if you're near like main urban areas, just worthwhile booking a call and ask them. But if you've got any specific questions about the curriculum or the dual mentorship model, or maybe portfolios, do book a call with the program advisor. Currently, we are also offering a 20% discount off our UX design program. I've added a link on Big Marker in the sticky notes. If you click there, it's Maureen's discount code, so you get 20% off the UX design program. And any questions, again, book a call with a program advisor. A couple of other things, I don't know if people have checked out, but we do also have a fantastic UX design blog. So we have a lot of editors at CareerFoundry who are writing a lot of articles, and a lot of great articles. Some are more specific, but some are also more general about career change. I've just added the link there on Big Marker. Do check that out too. And lastly, I know there's a lot of links. I'm getting through it. One last link is we also offer a CareerFoundry short course too. Do check out, we've also released recently a product design short course, which has also been written by our editors. So if you're thinking about dipping your toes a little bit further into UX design or product design, do check out one of our short courses. So I'm just seeing these questions come through. Do check out one of our short courses. And yeah, that's everything. Thank you so much for attending, everybody. And Maureen, thank you so much for presenting. And hopefully see you again. I need to check the calendar, but do check out the CareerFoundry events page for all up and coming events. Maureen, enjoy the evening.
Thank you so much.
Have dinner. I'm going to have dinner too. And good morning, good evening, wherever you're in.
See you all next time. Bye-bye.
Ciao. And end it this way.